School tried to control parking, students beat them by following every rule. It started the first day back from summer break. As I drove into the parking lot, I noticed new signs everywhere: assigned parking only. Violations will be fined. 5 miles per hour strictly enforced. At first, I thought it was just a temporary measure, but then I saw the assistant principals standing by the lot, wearing neon vests, flagging students down. They were writing down information on clipboards. I parked in my assigned spot, which was further than I usually had to, and headed to class. By second period, rumors started spreading. "They're handing out $50 fines if you're not parked exactly right," Jules told me. "I just got a warning for parking crooked." "What?" I said, incredulous. "Yep, and they're checking for rolling stops. If you don't stop for exactly 3 seconds, they fine you too." That afternoon, an email went out about the new student transportation conduct policy. It was ridiculous. We were assigned random parking spots, and fines were now issued for things like parking slightly outside the lines, going over 5 miles per hour, or rolling through stop signs. They installed cameras to monitor us, and if you didn't pay the fine within 2 weeks, you'd lose your parking pass. The worst part? There were no appeals. The rules were enforced immediately, with no room for error. Students were furious, but the administration didn't care. It was all about the money. The parking passes already cost $50, but now the fines were a money-making scheme. By the end of the first week, the parking lot had turned into a nightmare. Everyone was trying to park perfectly, measuring the lines, adjusting their cars to make sure they didn't get fined. Some students even got fined for things as small as parking a little too close to the line. The tension was unbearable. Jules had had enough. "We need to fight back," she said one day at lunch. "We'll follow every rule so perfectly it'll break their system." At first, it sounded crazy, but the more she explained, the more sense it made. We could go 5 miles per hour, stop at every sign for exactly 3 seconds, and measure every parking job. If something wasn't right, we wouldn't park. It would be so perfectly by the book that it would drive the administration crazy. We started spreading the word. By Thanksgiving, we had enough students on board to make it work. We were ready. Operation Slow Roll was about to begin. By Thanksgiving, Operation Slow Roll was in full swing. Jules had managed to gather a group of about 100 students, all ready to follow the rules to the letter. We had our plan: go 5 miles per hour, stop for exactly 3 seconds at every stop sign, and park in our assigned spots with military precision. We would measure our tire placement, and if we weren't perfect, we wouldn't park at all. The first day of the operation was a disaster for the administration. We all arrived early, lined up in the lot, cars inching forward at a snail's pace. No one was speeding. No one was rolling through stop signs. We came to a complete stop at every sign, counting aloud to make sure it was exactly 3 seconds. People walked in slow motion, making sure they followed every rule as if their lives depended on it. As we entered the school, the tension was palpable. Teachers seemed confused. The administration couldn't understand what we were doing, but they couldn't fine us for anything. By second period, the principal, Dr. Harris, announced over the intercom that students needed to follow all traffic rules on school property, as if we hadn't already been doing that. The next day, we stepped up our game. We started refusing to park if the lines weren't perfect, and we had backup plans for spots that were too small or crooked. People were getting frustrated, but they couldn't do anything because we weren't technically violating anything. The parking lot, once chaotic, now resembled a synchronized dance. Everyone moved in lockstep, making sure they followed every rule. The administration began to crack under the pressure. By Friday, things started changing. The assistant principals were running around, trying to make sense of the system that was suddenly being used against them. They couldn't issue fines for anything. They couldn't even enforce the assigned spots rule without looking like they were bending over backward to control us. They couldn't fine us for following their own rules too strictly. By the end of the week, the administration had no choice but to call an emergency meeting. But we knew it was too late. Operation Slow Roll was winning. By the third week of Operation Slow Roll, things were getting out of hand for the administration. Every morning, the parking lot became a perfect storm of students who followed the rules to the letter. We had our routine down: 5 miles per hour, exact 3-second stops, perfectly measured parking. No one was breaking any rules. But the lot was still chaotic. The worst part? The administrators couldn't fine anyone. No matter how hard they tried, they couldn't catch us in violation. Dr. Harris sent out emails reminding students to drive responsibly, but all it did was fuel our fire. Jules was right, following the rules so precisely was making it impossible for them to control us. On Wednesday, we pushed it further. Students began parking in spots that were clearly too small or oddly placed. If we couldn't fit, we just parked in a different spot and sat there until we were told to move. It was subtle, but it made the lot look like a giant mess. The security cameras were useless. They couldn't prove any violations, only that we were too careful. It was driving the administration mad. Then, during lunch, Mrs. Lang called a meeting. She looked exhausted. "You're all making a joke out of this," she said. "This isn't how this school is supposed to operate." "Maybe it's how the school should operate," Jules shot back, her voice calm but firm. "We're following your rules. If you can't deal with that, it's on you." The assistant principal had nothing to say to that. But things were about to change. That afternoon, Dr. Harris called another emergency PTA meeting. He was frantic, saying that student behavior was causing disruptions on campus. What was he going to do? He couldn't even fine us for doing exactly what he'd asked. We knew he was close to cracking. That evening, we got another email, this one marked urgent. Dr. Harris was announcing a new zero-tolerance policy for parking violations. Effective immediately, any violation of the student parking policy will result in immediate suspension of parking privileges. He was clearly desperate to regain control. But it was too late. We had the system figured out. They could threaten suspension all they wanted, but it was only a matter of time before the rules broke them. The moment Dr. Harris announced the new zero-tolerance policy, we knew it was over. He was desperate, but we were one step ahead. Operation Slow Roll had broken the system, and now he was trying to plug the holes, but it was too late. The students had tasted victory. The next morning, we arrived early, parked exactly in our spots, and followed every rule even more meticulously. We parked crooked spots, slow-rolled through empty lanes, and took the longest, most careful routes possible. The administration had no choice but to watch as we made their rules work against them. They tried to keep track, but it was impossible. Everyone was too careful, too precise. No one could be fined, and the parking lot became an ever-growing sea of perfect chaos. At lunch, the administration gathered the student body for an all-school meeting. Dr. Harris stood in front of us, trying to hold his composure. "We are making changes," he began, his voice strained. "Effective immediately, the new parking policies will be suspended." The room went silent. It felt like we were watching him cave under pressure. Jules stood up, calm but confident. "The students won," she said, addressing the crowd. "We followed your rules, and you had no choice but to admit we were right." Dr. Harris nodded, unable to argue. "Yes," he said. "You followed the rules, and we didn't foresee the consequences." As we walked out of the meeting, the entire school erupted into applause. The administration had been forced to reverse the rules. They couldn't handle being outsmarted by a bunch of teenagers. The parking lot was ours again. We didn't just change the parking rules. We changed the way the school looked at us. We weren't just the students who followed the rules, we were the ones who made the rules work for us. From that day on, things were different. No more fines, no more overbearing rules. It was a victory not just for the students who participated, but for everyone who'd been fed up with the system. It was proof that sometimes, the best way to fight back is by following the rules too perfectly for anyone to stop you.